Welcome to the second round of interviews from the Aerospace Component Manufacturers Aerospace Alley Trade Show. We had a great opportunity to talk to so many terrific people, and in this clip, we're talking about the high-level macro trends that are impacting the industry and the specifics about how to grow your business and grow your people. Let's get started. Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, I'm here with Paul Lavoie, Connecticut's Chief Manufacturing Officer. If you listen to this podcast, Paul's voice and his face, if you're watching, are going to be familiar to you. Paul, thanks so much for coming on.
Ari, it's always great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and listen, my pleasure. Appreciate you stopping by the booth here at ACM Aerospace Alley Trade Show. This has got to be one of the highlights of your tour of the year.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite days of the year, right? My most productive days, too. I get to come here, I get to see over 110 companies that work in manufacturing, and then talk to, this morning we had 1,200 students walking through here about some great careers in aerospace. So yeah, no, it's an exciting day. A lot of energy here today.
Absolutely, and look, and you're shepherding the governor around, getting yourself on pictures on TV, a little fandom with the students. We saw the selfies and the autograph requests. I'm not sure if they were for you or for the governor, but we'll leave that for people's imagination.
All for the governor, but it was like walking around with a rock star today. So absolutely, very popular, and the kids were very excited to see him, and tons of selfies and photos and opportunities to meet the governor. So the governor did a great job, and did a great job addressing the audience as well. So
yeah, I agree with that. And listen, I mean, it's really exciting, I think, from a manufacturing perspective, which is the perspective we're taking on the show, to see the governor being so engaged. I saw David Lehman here. Obviously the governor was here, as you mentioned. Senator Blumenthal was here. And look, it's an election year, so I'm sure that doesn't hurt getting people out and about. But they've been supportive every year I've ever been at the ACM, so that's multiple years going back pre-pandemic. It's really good, I think, that the government's taken such an active interest in manufacturing and today in aerospace manufacturing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The governor's very, very interested in what we're doing in manufacturing, and I'll get, probably every other week or so, his office will call and say the governor's going to be in a specific town, would like to see a manufacturer. And so, so he loves to go out and engage with manufacturers. He loves to go and walk shop floors, loves to be able to engage with people that are working on the shop floors, and he just loves to learn, as I do, about all the really cool things that we make here in Connecticut. It's just, we need to, and we are doing a better job of promoting what it is that we do, and you're a big help in doing that. But he's as excited as I am, and when we go out and we say, "Oh, I didn't know this was done here. This was really cool." So, very, very supportive of it, and also supportive from a policy perspective and funding as well for our initiatives. So, yeah, we're very lucky to have the governor is as supportive as manufacturing as he is.
Yeah, that's great. And listen, I don't want to take this whole show on that, but we'll have to get you back on a longer form show and really, as we're getting up to almost a year here in 3 months, we'll have to get you back for a 1-year anniversary and kind of talk through all the successes.
Sure.
But we're at the Aerospace Alley Trade Show, so I think we got to turn to aerospace. And I know it's something you and I have talked about in the past. Aerospace, looking out over the future, has got some really big things that, as an industry, we got to tackle to be successful in the future. And I think you would agree with me. It's important to the state of Connecticut that we do and make these changes so that we can be as successful and even more so in the future than we have been in the past.
Yeah, so we're working, we work very closely with our large OEMs in the state around aerospace, Sikorsky and Collins and Pratt & Whitney, to help understand where they're going. Right, and what initiatives are they undertaking, and then how do we, working with all the great resources we have here in Connecticut, make sure that we're helping support and build up the supply chain. At lunch we had Ron Angelo talk about supply chain resiliency, and that's one of the key initiatives that we're working on, is how do we make sure that our not only our reputation, but our whole business model of being such a really strong aerospace alley, making sure that we're shoring that up and making sure that we're supporting the supply chain. And there's 4 major initiatives that are going to affect the aerospace industry over the next 25 years that we know about. That's just what we know about. So we're looking at those, and we're looking at how we can help better support the aerospace manufacturers in making sure that they're compliant.
Well, Paul, everybody loves a good list. So you said four over the next 25 years.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what they are. So
sure.
What do we got?
Yeah, so the first one's cybersecurity, and it's becoming what we call CMMC, cybersecurity maturity model certification.
There we go.
So making sure that they all obtain their CMMC, right, and get their certification. It's a requirement coming down from the Department of Defense, and we have many aerospace manufacturers that are engaged with that right now. From a state's perspective, we're looking at that strategically as to how we can support that. We do support that with the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, so you can use your MVP voucher program for your CMMC process. So it is available for manufacturers to do that. Hot on the heels of that is model-based definition, and we've talked a lot about the digital model initiative that we recently completed. So we completed 1.0, which is just a pilot program with Pratt & Whitney, with Sikorsky, with Electric Boat, and then we're going to be looking to roll that out in the next 2 to 3 years to the defense supply chain in Connecticut, because we're getting a federal grant from the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation to be able to fund that. So we'll make sure that we're going to do the digital transformation of the defense supply chain, and then we're done with that, we're going to do the rest of the supply chain in Connecticut. So when you think of aerospace, you think of defense, even it'll come to commercial aerospace and it'll come to defense aerospace. A lot of companies do both. So we have to make sure that initiative is fully rolled out. That's, again, another top-down
Yeah,
DoD.
let me just jump in on that a little bit. I mean, look, cybersecurity, near and dear to my heart and my life outside the podcast. But so important on so many levels, and we've talked about it before, so I won't get too deep into it. But in particular, what we've seen going on in Ukraine, some of the stuff in China, and them attempting to kind of take some of the technology. Cybersecurity is really meaningful. It means a lot to businesses to keep them up and running, and frankly, from an aerospace technology and intellectual property, as well as a defense supply chain, we need to be up to speed, because we cannot have foreign adversaries getting our information, period, full stop.
Yeah, and if we're looking at doing a full digital transformation, and you better be locking up the digital back doors, right? So you can't,
front door, back door, windows,
side doors,
yeah, exactly.
Everything, right? So I mean, we always talk about the OEM being the front door and then the supply chain being the back door, but you have to have that entire ecosystem locked down before we can do digital model initiative, because without model-based definition, you have to have everything sealed off.
Correct,
so,
and then kind of converting back to that, which I think is the next thing you talked about, model-based definition, is really all about the digitification, I think is the right word I want to say, of sort of plans and drawings, right? It's the idea that, and if when you and I were down at Sikorsky taking that tour, we saw the great way they do is sort of cradle to grave digital twin of a part that you can actually track it from how it got built, where it got made, who worked on it, how long it took, where it's been in maintenance, all the way through. And really that relies on this model-based definition. It's having this digital model that allows us to build right from that. So you're right, lock the doors, and then we get this digitification, which should really streamline designing, should streamline R&D. We've seen it in the Raider program, at Sikorsky, and it's going to come to other stuff. We need Connecticut to be on the forefront of that. Intellectual property and knowledge and know-how is what we do here, and we need to own that space. Agree?
No, absolutely, yeah. And we're seeing results of things that used to take 2 months to get on a machine are getting on in 2 days.
Woo.
And so, this is really critical too. We all know we have a workforce problem. And so this is critical as well, because it requires us now to have a different workforce, requires us to upskill that workforce, but it's also going to allow us to we're never going to fill all our jobs with people. We have to look at technology and how we can use advanced technology to be able to take some of the simpler things that we're doing and automate those. And you're really going to get that with model-based definition, because you're no longer going through the iterations of paper revisions of everything and handling all that information and all of that. When it's changed at the OEM, it's changed on the machine. And so the operator, all he has to do is know, this is the part I'm making, doesn't have to know anything about version control or anything like that. It'll be all done. And that'll flow all the way through to quality, and then flows all the way back. So there's not, quality's not, where's the traveler? Where's the, what version am I on? Did I make the wrong part? I can tell you how many parts we threw out at Carrier Manufacturing because we're on the wrong version. But,
right.
So.
And this carries through the supply chain. So important. And then what comes after that? So CMMC 1, model-based definition 2, and then what's number 3?
Well, coming hot on the heels is additive manufacturing. I mean, we're really looking at, we're now at the point with metals that the technology exists for us to be able to have parts that are going to be 3D printed and put in our aircraft, and they'll be lighter and they'll be more durable parts, but it also speeds up the whole development time. Again, when you're using subtractive manufacturing, you have a much longer cycle that you need to be able to make parts. And when you're using additive, you put it in the printer, if you will, and set it up and come pick it up in the morning.
That's right.
And
push
the
a button
done.
and out she comes.
Right. And if it's wrong, well, you figure out what's wrong, you reprogram and you hit the button again. So in talking to some leaders in the aviation space, they're thinking that 70-80% of all aircraft parts by 2040, 2045 are going to be made by additive manufacturing.
Wow.
And Pratt & Whitney is committed. So the President Biden has a program called AM Forward, of which we're really actively involved in. But Pratt & Whitney is committed to 50% of their RFPs for additive manufacturing going to small and medium-sized manufacturers. Connecticut's got to be ready. We will be ready for that.
That's huge.
We will be ready. So absolutely.
Listen. So we're locking the doors. We're going digital, and then additive just seems like the next logical step from digital design to additive manufacturing. Just so important. So we got one CMMC. We got model-based definition. We got additive manufacturing. What's number 4?
Well,
Paul?
the other one's the big game changer, which is sustainable aviation fuel. Right, so it's getting away from carbon fuels, getting away from jet fuel, looking at hydrogen and looking at other sources of fuels. But the really interesting thing for Connecticut around that will be, well, how does that change the design of the engine? Engines, if you've noticed, are getting smaller and smaller, but yet more powerful and more powerful as they go through design iterations. So now when we look at a sustainable fuel, we look at hydrogen, what is that going to do to the engine? How is that going to transform the engine? And we don't know that yet, and we're working on that. But we want to make sure that work is done here in Connecticut, right? We are the jet engine leader. We make the best jet engines in the world right here in Connecticut. We want to make sure that all of that work that we're going to look at sustainable aviation fuel, and then all design work around the engines and what's going to be required in the ecosystem is all done here in Connecticut. And that's an initiative that needs to be done by 2050. So that gets our, as we close the door in 2022 and come to 2023, it's 27 years, right? So that's our 25-year window for major initiatives. That's going to be a heavy workload for Connecticut manufacturers. However, with the infrastructure that we have and the folks that we have working on it with our great partners, like the folks at CCAT, the folks at Constep, our education systems, and all the smart people that we have working together on it.
We've got a plan. The chief manufacturing officer.
Well, that's where it gets driven from, right? Well, it has to get driven from somewhere, and so it comes from my office where we'll drive these initiatives, bring in those partners. I talked about it in my luncheon speech about Team Connecticut, about everybody's coming together, how we're collaborating, we're cooperating, we're coordinating, we're making sure that we're all talking, but we're all making sure that we have these common objectives, which is to maintain Connecticut as the aviation headquarters, Aerospace Alley. Make sure that we keep our dominance in aerospace, and we make sure Aerospace Alley stays here in Connecticut, and we take these initiatives and we not only support our large OEMs, but help them support the supply chain. Make sure that we have a healthy, robust supply chain. And quite frankly, my mission is to be so far ahead of the rest of the country with supply chain that Pratt & Whitney and other suppliers are moving work back to Connecticut because we're going to be so advanced with that. So we'll continue to grow manufacturing by having it come to Connecticut because we're going to be on the forefront of these technologies.
I love that, and I think, Paul, just to put a fine point on it, I know you got to get going, but the supply chain, I don't think people fully appreciate how having a ready, able, willing, advanced supply chain, how important that is, right? When you look at where you want to put work, how do you want to design and build airplanes? Much like if you're going to drill for oil, you want to drill where the oil is. If you're going to build and design a jet engine, you want to build and design it at a place where you've got the supply chain to help you bring it to fruition. And it's so important that we continue to maintain that dominance, just like you said. Yeah,
we have the advanced workforce here in Connecticut because of our long history in that industry, and we have a multi-tiered supply chain. We have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, and they're all here in Connecticut. There's 4,400 manufacturers in our little state, and so, and they are all supporting each other, and you can't, we have to look all the way down to that tier 5 supplier, to make sure that they're being healthy and they're being, they're resilient. But we have one of the strongest and one of the best supply chains in the country, and that's why a lot of companies come to us. I mean, we're making we have an aerospace manufacturing making marine parts for a company in Georgia because they can't find the technical expertise in Georgia to make these parts, so they have to make them in Connecticut because we've got the chops to be able to do it.
That's some exciting stuff. And listen, this isn't the first time Connecticut manufacturers have had to make drastic technological changes. I don't see too many manufacturers being powered by the water wheel anymore. So we've made some big changes over the centuries of Connecticut manufacturing, and I have to say, I'm committed and convinced that we can make another one for sure. But what's really exciting, Paul, and I want to give you credit, certainly throw some to your predecessor, and also to the government around you to support you, but you got to take the credit. Thinking 25 years down the road, it's something that you hear all the time that the U.S. government doesn't do enough, and certainly you've heard that the Connecticut government doesn't do enough, right? As used to be said, we didn't even look down as far down as the bridge of our nose. So to hear you talking about the plans to get us thinking about what we need to do over the next 25 years, it's extremely encouraging. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And that's my job as Chief Manufacturing Officer is to make sure that we have what we need today, right? Because we have to make sure we're getting our work done today and we have the workforce that we need for today while we're keeping our eye on the future so that we can continue to grow and we can continue to maintain our dominance in manufacturing. So
I love it, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by. I'll let you get back to your glad handing. Have a great rest of the show.
Thanks, Ari. It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm with Kevin Vicha, CEO of Bromford Group. Kevin, thanks so much for coming to the booth today.
Absolutely delighted to be here.
Well, listen, Kevin, we haven't had you on the show before, so we're going to start off with our famous two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
What do we make and why do we make it? We make ultra-high precision aerospace engine assemblies and machined products. So you look at most engines flying out there today, whether it's the F-135, the engine on the Eurofighter, we make components, whether they're assembled, whether they're machined, lots of capability. 2 sites here in Connecticut, 3 sites in the UK, 1 site in India. And the reason we do it is we just love aerospace. It gets in your blood. I've been in aerospace for well over 30 years and just absolutely love it.
You don't look to me a day is over 30, so this industry must be good to people.
I was fishing for a compliment.
Yeah, you hooked me. You hooked me. It's really good stuff. And listen, you said you've been in the industry 30 years. So before we get to Bromford, now I do want to talk to you about ACM. I know it's your first show because you just took over as CEO of Bromford,
yes.
I think just last July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So it's kind of a new gig. But you did mention 30 years in aerospace. So just maybe for the audience here, just kind of give us that background. Who are you with? How'd you build it up? How'd you get into it to begin with?
Sure. Started in industrial gas turbines with Pratt & Whitney's industrial gas turbine division, and spent a lot of time in customer support, engineering, and then moved over into the aerospace side with Pratt & Whitney. Was actually based in Toulouse, France, so Pratt & Whitney's interface with Airbus. I mean, what better place to be on the planet than in Toulouse, France, at Airbus? Okay, Seattle's also cool, but spent a few years there. Many years in operations, manufacturing, ran a lot of Pratt & Whitney's both OEM manufacturing sites here in the US and Israel and China, and then also ran Pratt's largest repair businesses and had a stint in global repair sales. So many years, I was with the business for 30 years. Now it's RTX, of course, Raytheon, but it felt like 10 different companies, an awesome experience. My last role was the president of the Engine Alliance, which was is a Pratt GE joint company. So type certificate holder for the GP7000 on the Airbus A380. Awesome experience to not only step out of Pratt, but be working as a partner with Pratt's arch rival GE.
And then Airbus too.
But to have the Airbus interface and spend a lot of time with customers, Emirates, Etihad, Qatar, over at Air France, Korean Airlines, those were our big customers. Then over to GKN for a couple of years, loved GKN, was a chief operating officer running 11 of their sites. And then, as you mentioned just recently, over to Bromford, where we're just trying to build and strengthen this business and supporting a lot of the same type of customers, OEM customers globally.
Yeah, listen, it seems like when you lay it out all like that, seems like everything you've done, Kevin, has brought you exactly to where you are. I mean, what kind of experience? I mean, it's just like, it sounds like you worked at 10 different companies all through one. It's a pretty cool experience. Yeah,
it's been, just aerospace, like I said earlier, it gets in your blood, and the global travel that you experience. You visit customers, you visit suppliers. I think, with UTC, between that and GKN and now Bromford, probably spent time in more than 70 countries, and it's just fascinating. I mean, when you look at some of the kids that are here, that were here this morning at the ACM show, it's just great. for them to see what can be in front of them in terms of a career, it's really exciting. I mean, it's good products, good people, and good places all over the world.
Yeah, and some good pay too. We can get an extra P in
We can always use more of that.
That's right. Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, so let's talk a little bit about the Bromford. So you took over as CEO in July. So just give us a little background. How did that come to, like a little bit of background about Bromford? You mentioned the two businesses in Connecticut were acquisitions. So maybe just talk about Bromford and then kind of your rise to CEO there.
Sure. Bromford is a business. The different operating units have been around for decades. But Liberty Hall is our private equity owner, and since 2016 they've been acquiring 3 sites in the UK, all in the Midlands in the Rolls-Royce area. Mm-hmm. 2 of those are fabrications units, one of them is a machining unit. So 3 factories in the UK. Then in 2018, Aerospace, which is in Chester, Connecticut, was acquired. And then in 2019, Numet, which is in Orange, Connecticut, was acquired. And coming with the Aerospace acquisition is a small site in India, in Bangalore. So you've got 6 operating sites, little under 500 people, and a great business. I mean, what's really exciting about the business is when you look at every one of our customers, whether it be defense, military, IGT, business jet, commercial, all these platforms are growing. So it's a great time to be in the business. And really, you mentioned why the CEO change. We had a great CEO, but that individual was based in the UK, and the real prominent growth is aerospace and defense in the US. So the decision was made to transition that role and the headquarters to the US. So our headquarters is essentially here in Connecticut, out of our Numet and Aerospace facilities down in southern Connecticut.
Orange, you said?
Orange. Yeah. Orange is the Numet facility, and then Chester is the Aerospace facility.
Orange is the new black.
So we've maintained these brand names because with particular customers, they mean something, but they all roll into the Bromford Group.
And so what's the thesis around building the businesses together? So I mean, I picked up on, hey, move the CEO here, opportunity in the U.S., Connecticut's a great place to be in aerospace, let's face it. So that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. What's sort of the thesis behind bringing all the businesses together kind of writ large?
There's a few integration benefits. One is just what I would call combination benefits. In other words, one of our sites does an enormous amount of work for Pratt & Whitney. Some of the other sites don't do any Pratt & Whitney work. So we can introduce customers to these other sites, and
which presumably do different processes, so potentially expand the portfolio.
Every one of these sites
leveraging relationships.
Exactly, leveraging the customer benefit, bringing that capability to a variety of different customers, and then what we've really tried to do is add value. A lot of these were formerly small, family-owned companies. So how do you add value? And one of the things we've really driven across all the businesses is what we call high-performance culture. So how do you look at technical capability? How do you look at leadership ability and develop that and train people? A lot of folks in these smaller companies, they don't get that training. So we're offering that training. We look at org design to give people the ability to move up. We look at, we have a program called Talent Development Program. So we're taking someone early career, high potential, we're setting them up with a mentor, someone far more experienced. Sometimes the mentee is based in the UK and the mentor is based here in the US. Doesn't matter. We're very global, and we're really trying to take what we call 6 different high-performance culture principles and roll those out and integrate across the business. So you don't have these small little, we try to think globally, respect locally. So we're really trying to roll out what you might see at a Pratt & Whitney or at a GKN, these large, I would say, but effective leadership development programs, and roll them out at a smaller company.
How's that? I mean, I know we're only a little over a year into it. How's that going?
It's going very well. I mean, I should say most companies do. You say how is it going? We just today came out with our employee survey results. Our participation from last survey 6 months ago to today, our participation was up 30 percentage points. Employee engagement is up. So, I mean, that's just one measure. But I mean, the results just came out today, so it's top of mind, and you asked how's it going, and it was really exciting to kind of see those results. And when you see more people engaging in a survey, it says, hey, these people are switched on. They saw the fact that they said something and we did something about it, and they saw that happen, and now they're engaged in saying, hey, my feedback counts.
Sure,
it's pretty powerful.
Being heard makes all the difference in the in the whole world. So let's dovetail this back a little bit to the show. You know, we're at the ACM trade show, so I want to focus a little bit on that. You know, I'm gonna pivot over to, you talked about the kids this morning, and look, we know that employee acquisition and retention is crucial, and it's always been, but never more so, I think, than it has been lately.
Yeah.
So I wonder how you're thinking about leveraging that, and how you're thinking about recruiting new folks and engaging with the young people here.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways, but one of the foundational ones is along the lines of what I started to talk about, high performance culture. That's sort of the basis of this, what we call high performance culture, is what we call RISE, respect, integrity, safety, and operational excellence. So yes, we want to bring people into business for good pay, good people, good products, but what we're trying to do is not just let our culture develop on its own in any haphazard way. We're trying to really put guardrails around what we want to be as a business, from respecting people, operating with integrity, always having a safe workforce, but focused on operational excellence. And when you talk that with employees who are coming in, it kind of resonates with them. You're not just coming into any mom and pop shop where, hey, here's your job.
Here's your job.
You know,
here's a machine. Here's a blueprint or process.
Go for it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We've got structure around how we can build you up as an employee. You take one of these folks who come in, and we put them in the Aspiring Talent Program. I came in to be, a junior accountant, and now you're putting me in this leadership development program, and I've got a mentee, and I'm learning about presentation skills, and I'm learning about, my Myers-Briggs, and so you don't find that at a lot of these smaller companies. So we're trying to behave in a way which is agile, thinking globally, respecting locally, but really building up our talent. But there's no question, it is a challenge. There's no question, quality, when I say quality, technical quality, engineering, it's a good time to be an engineer.
Yeah, it's a good time. Yes, it's good to be in demand. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do you? I mean, so give me some feedback on the show. You told me it's your first show. What do you think?
Well, literally, I just got out of a board meeting. I came straight here, and I walked right down the hall. I had gotten feedback from our folks here that, hey, they sent me photos of some of the younger folks being at the booth this morning, but I haven't even had a chance to walk around yet. So
was it what you, was it, given your first time, is this what you expected, bigger, smaller, what's your?
Definitely, I mean, a lot of activity. I mean, here we are with we need headphones,
Yes.
So it's great. I mean, there's you can just feel the energy here. A lot of vendors, a lot of suppliers. I look forward to walking around and just, meeting some new folks, seeing some of the other capabilities that are out there.
Yeah, it's
so
a great
exciting.
Yeah, great networking opportunity, and I think you mentioned a lot of opportunity in aerospace. And if we're going to capture that opportunity, we need events like this to bring the industry together, right, and kind of rise.
Absolutely.
Speaking of rise, rising tide, kind of lifting all those
Absolutely.
boats.
Yeah, we've got to inspire that next generation of folks. I mean, it's phenomenal, the products that we make. When you look up and you look at a Joint Strike Fighter, you look at an F-15, you look at an F-16, you look at some of these military drones that are flying around that you don't look up and see those, but
right.
It's exciting stuff.
It is.
It really is exciting stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's where it sort of gets into your blood, right? You
Yeah.
sort of figure you're on these programs, you see what's
Absolutely.
going on, and it's it's super exciting. So what are some of the techniques you have been using to do some of the recruiting? You mentioned engineering stuff. What are you doing to kind of address that?
I mean, we do a lot of the traditional, we work with executive recruiters, but one of the things, in addition to the RISE program that I talked about, we've really upgraded our website, because every time you interview someone, they say, oh, I went to your website, and after we started interviewing some folks, we really got to make sure this website is on par with, this is an incredible place to be. You've got Pratt & Whitney, you've got Sikorsky, therefore Lockheed Martin. So you're not just competing with some of these smaller mom and pop shops, you're competing with the best of the best. So we just are trying to be the best of the best right along with them. And I hope when you went to our website, you saw a professional looking, cool products, a lot about our culture. But we'll do recruiting events, we do community events.
Do you find you have the same challenges in England?
Yes.
You're sort of in the same, you're in the Rolls-Royce neighborhood. I got to imagine some similar dynamics.
It's very much, and in fact, I could say, I think it would be even more intense. One of the reasons I almost see it as more intense in the UK is what we're finding there, a lot of people are opting to not necessarily be in manufacturing. There's a lot of warehousing, well, just like there here is in Connecticut, there's a lot of warehousing in the UK, but we're finding that some people are saying, I don't want to work in a machine shop. I'd much prefer to just work in a warehouse or go be a landscaper. You know, when we look at the people who are leaving, rarely, I shouldn't say rarely, but most times in the UK, they're not leaving for aerospace. They're leaving for another industry.
Which is different than what you're seeing in your Connecticut ops?
Yes, in Connecticut, I mean, look at, Aerospace Alley, there's a lot of pull. But we're all pulling on the same resources,
Yeah.
So
we got to make the pool bigger.
Yes,
we need to stock more fish, I think is what the answer is.
Exactly. And that's why it's so great that this event really catered to younger generation to bring these folks up.
Yeah, and I mean,
so
I know
we work with universities, we work with schools. I mean, we're across the board in our recruitment efforts. But what we found is we find people. We've absolutely find people. I mean, our retention rates are sort of on par with the industry. COVID was absolutely a challenge for the business.
Yeah,
but we're finding when we put roles out there, we find people.
Getting them filled.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic. So listen, I know we're a short show, so we'll do a quick little chat, but I'll wrap it up. But before we do that, I'm just curious, it seems like you've got a lot of plans. I mean, you strike me, Kevin, as a mover and a shaker. I know Bromford's got backing. You just, a couple of years off on the acquisition train. I'm sure COVID, put a little pause on that. Now we're back in 2022. Things are in full swing. What does the future of Bromford look like, both from a just business growth standpoint and potentially acquisitions?
I mean, what's exciting for us is, yes, we are out there looking for acquisitions, not more the same. We're looking for complementary work. But when we look at 2023, for example, we've already loaded up 23 with backlog, with the amount of work that gives us 40-50% growth for next year. So, you go to air shows, you go to Paris Air Show, you go to Farnborough. Some years are all about everybody looking for more work, and some people some years are more about simply delivering on what you have. And really, we're entering that period where, I think for a lot of the suppliers, I know for us, it's just a matter of we've got the backlog, we've got the work, we just now need to execute it, and and continue to expand margins. But expanding margins, right, we all need to do it. We all need to grow our margins, but that is a challenge. One of the challenges we see is, and I don't know what you've heard from your discussions earlier today with different folks, but the pressure from the raw material suppliers, prices are up, but yet the OEMs at the top, they want to absolutely
hold prices,
drive price down. So it's those middle manufacturers, many of whom are here today, that it's a challenge.
Getting squeezed.
They're getting squeezed, and you'd like to think it's no different than any time in the past, but these are, you look at the inflation rates right now, you look at labor inflation. In the UK, you look at utilities are more than doubled in the UK. So you spent $1,000 on electricity last month, it's $2,000 this month. So everybody's
that electricity
got
bill is going to show up at your doorstep every month.
Yeah. So it's all about continuous improvement, right? One operator, two machines, double spindles. So you got one operator, working towards lights out operations. You've got to focus on continuous improvement. But our plans are all around growth, finding new platforms, and there's a lot of new platforms out there. We like to get in early on a platform, get a couple of part numbers, prove ourselves, and then expand and proliferate, on part numbers across those platforms.
Listen, it's exciting stuff, Kevin. I really, really appreciate you stopping by the booth.
Thank you.
Glad to have you in the Connecticut ecosystem. Glad to have Bromford, CEO around, and we'll look forward to staying with you as the journey goes on.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Thanks.
Hey, I'm here with Susan Kasa, president of Boulevard Machining the Future. Susan, thanks so much for coming to the booth today.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Listen, that makes both of us. Listen, you are the first ACM board member we've had on today. So I got to ask you, what are you thinking about this show from a board perspective?
Absolutely loving it. Jessica's done a great job with her team. Getting out of the pandemic stage, getting back out here, seeing people, networking. I use the words patience and persistence because that's really what it takes, getting to know people, getting our foot in the door with other partnerships, and finally being able to talk to people and seeing people firsthand.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, the energy is just really amazing. I mean, it's just terrific.
I think it is this year.
Yeah, it was good last year, but this feels a lot more like 2019. Last year was like a little bit of a breakout. You had less people, but we had been cooped up for a while, so there was some energy. But I feel like this is back in a big, big way.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, and it just feels like that burst of energy is here, and we're all able to network and talk.
Saw we had some Connecticut political stars stopping by today. You know, Ned was all over the place, bringing energy. Senator Blumenthal was here. It's pretty active.
He did. He stopped by my booth as well, said hello. I know we're over the line in Massachusetts, but it's always great. Paul Lavoie, talked to him. I've been talking to him a lot. We're a little different because we're over the Massachusetts line, but we're excited to be part of the Connecticut and the Aerospace Alley.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are a big part of the ecosystem at Boulevard. I know Westfield's technically, not Connecticut, but awfully close. And I mean, last time we talked, last year actually at the ACM show, you were telling me about SpaceX, and you guys were doing some stuff on that and kind of taking aerospace to the next frontier there. How's that going?
It has been going great. We're continuing to see things from SpaceX, even a little bit of Blue Origin, Collins. Excited that we're finally exploring and doing more with space. It's kind of been the forgotten market for many, many years, and I feel like we've been living off other countries and different things, and we're excited to be part of it. It's very complex work, and we're approved for quite a few sources, so we're excited to take part in that and get to this next level.
How does it compare getting into sort of the space part of it versus like sort of regular aerospace? I think when people look around and think about, you look up in the sky, you see planes all the time going every which way. You've got commercial, you've got military, you've got domestic, you've got international, right? So there's just so much. Space seems like a much smaller market, more complex, but maybe smaller. I mean, am I thinking about that right?
It is smaller. It's, I want to say, almost a little more scrutinized.
In what way?
Specifications, tolerances, source inspection. There's so much to it and getting approved. It's not just space vehicles, it's manned space vehicles. There's so many different categories and the type of work that goes into getting people to space and the vehicles. And we also do a lot with L3 and Harris, so satellite, so a big outer space presence for us.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, listen, you think about aerospace and planes, and you always think about the tough inspections, tight tolerances, because of how much safety is involved. Sounds like space, you're saying, is even like another level?
It really is. It's above and beyond, along with the Navy. That's another one where we see a lot of just not so much, as I use the word scrutinized, but the regulations are so much tighter in what we're doing. Files are kept for, let's say, 40 years versus a shorter amount.
Really? 40-year retention?
40 retention for outer space.
Wow.
With one of our customers. We're excited to be part of it.
Yeah. And you said you're in General Dynamics too? Are you going
are.
underwater? You're going every direction.
Going every direction.
You're going underwater up into outer space, huh?
We are, but with General Dynamics, what we're seeing is happening with all of what's happening around the world in the military. A lot more contracts are coming out, so we're excited to have rolled from new product introduction to production now with General Dynamics and expanding our presence with them.
That's really terrific. You guys kind of getting your tentacles out into a lot of different stuff, Susan. What's kind of the thought process behind it? How are you thinking about it?
It's being diversified to be sustainable as a small company, being cyber secure. So with General Dynamics, we've had to step up to the NIST, to the CMMC. When we moved to our new building, made it a smart building, so it allowed us to put all of the steps in place in order to gain all these customers. So we may be small, but we're kind of the hidden jewel, as I call us. And
small but mighty.
Small but mighty, and working with all the primes. So we're excited about all the partners that we have.
How do you think about, one of the challenges I know people face when they try and think about diversification, right? So on the one hand, sustainability is nice, right? If you diversify a little bit, then you sort of can if someone's down, someone's up, whatever. But then you also have some of the challenges of satisfying potentially some very different masters who maybe have different needs. How do you think about, from your role, how do you think about satisfying those different masters?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It's about adapting. But I've also been busy growing a younger management team because it's the younger people who are going to take us to the next level, as well as grow Boulevard to the next level. Mm-hmm. And allowing those younger people to spread their wings. They love the technology, staying ahead of the curve, experimenting, and allowing that younger staff to really grow and bring the company to the next level.
How have you been thinking about, it makes me think about, we're talking about young people and technology and some of the excitement you're talking about. Makes me think about workforce, attracting and retaining workforce. Do you think that kind of being in these different exciting programs has been helpful from that perspective?
Oh, absolutely. Especially our new building, when the younger people come through and see the bright, shiny building being a smart building. It absolutely attracts them, as well as the new equipment. When they get a taste of all this new technology, I mean, kids have a lot to look forward to. They don't have to go to college and have, $100,000 or more of debt.
Right.
They can use their hands, these entrepreneurs, the vocational schools, really getting the parents on board, even right down to the middle school. Like I heard a few people say, oh, these kids are kind of young. But you got to start steering them and showing them what the future is and getting the parents on board as well. So we're excited of what we can offer for these young people.
Yeah, we had how many kids did we have come through the trade show today? Like 1,200, I think.
1,200. A lot of kids today.
That's a solid number.
It was, and it's so exciting to see them, the ROTC young people, and really seeing these young people want to be engineers, pilots.
Is that what you're hearing?
Yes.
Tell me some stories.
Heard I got 2 pilots this morning. So I'm like, okay, well, there's going to be a shortage there too, from what we're hearing.
Yeah.
But really, just broadening their horizons, showing them, come into manufacturing, but learn the product. You need to learn the entire process to be good at what you're doing, or to even design a part.
Yeah.
So really just talking to them, because it's really what they need.
Do you think it's important to these events like this? Do you see this as a critical juncture to help build the workforce of the future?
Oh, absolutely. They need the exposure. Young people are so caught up in social media, which is great, but they also need to talk to people. Young kids don't interact with the business world like they used to. So getting them out here today, we can see the steps the teachers have made. You can see these kids trying to get into the phase of the business world.
That's really, really cool. How have you been using, your ACM experience? Obviously you're on the board. I know you participate in events, this one not being the only one. What are you finding the value that Boulevard gets from being a part of this organization?
The ACM has such a draw from small companies to tier 1 OEMs. It's just so diverse that we enjoy networking with everyone here. There's just such great exposure here.
Yeah, and I mean, you're developing all these relationships with these primes. Obviously some of them aren't even in New England, but a lot of these companies, the work you're doing, these companies are based right here in Connecticut.
They are.
Helping you build those relationships?
They really are. We have really, with getting into our new building, it causes them to look at us a little bit better now.
Tell me about this new building. Give me some of the stats. You keep saying smart building. What do we got? Paint a picture for me.
So we acquired a building that was a manufacturing facility. However, we gutted it right down to the walls. 30,000 feet of wire. We have 6 networks, becoming NIST compliant and CMMC. So when our employees come in or out, literally when they're disarming or arming the building, it lights up or it shuts down.
Really?
We can see everything from our tablets, every single door. We can monitor who has opened it. So badges to get in and out of every single door in our building.
It's amazing. And then have you extended that technology beyond the building to the production floor?
We have. So again, whether a machinist is walking into the quality department or engineering, again, they got to scan through the door. And this is what's being required by the DoD going forward. And in order to play in this market with all of the tier 1 companies, we have to comply.
Right.
It's really important to be cyber compliant.
And are you doing stuff on the machining? Like, are you guys doing anything with some of the more industry 4.0 type configurations? ERP management, connecting your machines to
We do.
smart
We
tracking?
have to. So even our travelers, everything is barcoded. Every operation is scanned into.
Really?
We have to. So to play in this market and to be competitive, we may be small, but we're playing in their ballpark. So we have to do all these things.
Man, that's really terrific. Susan, thank you so much for coming by. It's been a great show. Thanks for the time that you're committing, to ACM to help put these shows on. We've got to get the word out there, right? We've got to get it with the workforce. Check that box here. We got to communicate with each other so we know what's going on, and then we got to make this show be known far and wide so people understand the benefits of being part of ACM and participating in Aerospace Alley.
Absolutely. We're blessed to be part of it. So thank you. Thanks for having me today.
I'm here with Lou Melluzzo, President, CEO of Air Industries Group. Lou, thank you so much for offering to sit down with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, it's my pleasure. Look, we're at the ACM trade show, but we are still going to ask you our normal two questions, Lou, which is what do you make and why do you make it?
What do we make? Well, we're a military. We're basically a defense contractor. We have operations both in Connecticut and in Long Island, New York, and our product mix is in New York is F-15 landing gear, F-16 landing gear, F-18 landing gear, which we're licensed through Boeing, F-35 landing gear, KC tanker, E-2D landing gear, which we do exclusively for Grumman. We also make arresting gear, so that's all the contraptions that catch the aircraft coming onto a carrier.
Nice.
We make launch bars that catapult these things off the carrier. The other part of our business is rotorcraft. We do probably 25-30% rotorcraft, a lot of Sikorsky Blackhawk, now CH-53K work.
Yeah.
And in our Connecticut operations, we're on the engine side. We grew up around Pratt & Whitney, so we do both GE, Pratt, GKN, MB Aero, and Rolls, and a bunch of other things. So a lot of rotating parts. I'm a native of Connecticut. I still live in Connecticut, although I work across the pond. Mm-hmm. And I saw an interesting track on the manufacturing differences between New York and Connecticut.
Really?
Growing up around the engine business, most of my career was spent at EDAC Technologies. A lot of engine work, a lot of round parts that have, a lot of turning that has some milling.
Right.
Well, the product on Long Island is totally different because everybody grew up around Fairchild, Republic, Grumman.
Yeah.
You're talking avionics, landing gear, aerostructures. It's a lot of milling with very little turning.
Very little turning.
I'm hard pressed to find ring work in New York. Nobody has a vertical lathe.
No one has it at all.
So I probably have one of the few ones on the island. So,
that's no kidding.
So
all the work that you guys are doing down on Long Island there, that's all the landing gear stuff. It's really funny, right? You got the stuff that's on the plane to help it land. You got the netting to help it from going off the boat, and then you launch it from the boat. So you really cornered the market there as it goes.
Yeah. We seem to have a pretty good grasp on different, our wish list, and we are just starting on it, is to get, air, sea, and land. We just tapped into the submarine business, so we're going to be on, hopefully, a submarine supplier.
They build submarines around here, Lou, do they?
I think one or two.
One or two, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
I had an opportunity to tour one a few months back, a $4.8 billion Virginia-class sub, and it was amazing.
How was that?
Amazing.
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, not for me though. I don't think I could be on it for 6 months.
No, underwater for 6 months. That's not the Melluzzo way to do it.
No, 1 hour was enough.
That's funny. So let's talk a little bit about what you guys do. We're here at the ACM trade show. Trade show center got two components, right? Well, maybe three: networking and education, and then clearly this morning we got a lot of students coming around. So I think it's always good to understand what's it like to work at Air Industries Group. From the employee perspective, if someone's looking to get into manufacturing and sort of get started, what would they expect to come and work for you guys? What would that be like, their day-to-day?
So, we have an army of engineers. For a company our size, we've got 10 engineers. So it depends. I have 25 people in quality. And on the shop floor, we run 2 shifts like everybody else. We typically... we look to hire, when you're in front of a piece of metal that costs 30, 40, 50,000 and above, you really want the right person touching it. But we have a pretty decent apprenticeship program that, we bring in, kids or displaced workers and a shadow mentor type program. And we try to keep that under control. But we always have 2 or 3, 4 people in New York and a couple of guys in Connecticut to do that. But one of the interesting things about our business is we have a steady Eddie type product line that we do day in and day out, but it's never the same twice. With continuous improvement, when you think that you're doing the best you possibly can on this part, you huddle around it, and then somebody has a great idea on how to cut 10% of time out of it or something. So it's always an evolving business. It's always an evolving product, and for me, my passion is to build a better mousetrap all the time.
All the time,
So, all the
continuous
time,
improvement.
continuous.
Yeah, that's a
So-
great place to be. So let's talk about the apprenticeship program. So I mean, there's people out there that maybe you mentioned displaced workers. Maybe there's a kid that just isn't feeling the school track and says, "Hey,
Yep.
I want to get into it." What does an apprenticeship look like? You know, from your perspective at AIG, how does someone get started? And tell us about it. Like, what do they have to do to be successful?
Well, we asked the same question that we're asking in our booth here at the show today. You know, what's your passion? What do you want to do? You're not going to put somebody that is interested in checking product on a machine-making product. Although it might be part of the curriculum because it's nice to be well-rounded, if you can actually make the product, there's a ton of stuff you can do, you know. But we try to put them, you know, we have apprentices in quality, we have them in CNC programming, we have them in engineering, in projects, in purchasing. So you try to get what their wants or the avenue they want to pursue in life, and you start with that. And they say, but you know, it'd be better off if you learn a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and if they bite into what they really want to do, they're on board with learning everything else that makes that position successful.
How long do I have to, like, if I want to start an internship program, Lou? What am I committing to? What's it kind of look like from the time perspective?
You know, we have kids that come in for the summer and they're gone by at the start of school, but some of the best employees we have in our shops kind of started that way. So they come in for a couple of months. They get, you know, you shadow them for a few months, and they really find an interest and just.
A little opportunity to sort of sample, little sample, and then sort of see what's going on.
Just like any other manufacturers, you know, our median age is probably 55, 57, and we have a lot of long-time employees, especially at Sterling. We got 40-year-plus employees.
Sterling's the Connecticut one of the Connecticut operations.
Yes.
Yeah, you got a lot of long-time employees there.
Long-time employees.
And you see them. How do you see them take into some of the young kids, let's call it, that are coming in behind?
We don't have a lot of grumpy old men.
No?
Honestly, it's a breath of fresh air when a trainee or a student comes into the operation. There's a lot of people that are willing to help. You know, that has never been a problem, at both locations.
You know, there's a lot of people that I think manufacturing is all people that look, you know, something like us. You know, something male, something pretty white, something pretty gray hair here and there. You know, what are you seeing on the manufacturing floor in terms of the changing face of the workforce, you know, from an age, from a race, from a gender perspective?
Well, you know, it's in everybody's best interest to lower the age.
Yeah. Wait, is there a way for me to lower my age, Lou?
No, but I've got to say a couple of things, because I'm on the board of a nonprofit organization in New York called ADAPT. We have a booth here today, which it mimics the ACM. You know, we're not quite the ACM, but we want to be like the ACM. And I have bridged the gap between the two organizations. And so we're involved with Stony Brook University on STEM programs, Manufacturing Day, and all this other stuff. You know, I see a lot of activity being geared towards the high school students. I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago that said they have to get into the lower grades to get kids involved. And I think that's great. I'm 110% on board with that, because this is where our future is. Mm-hmm. But I think we're missing the boat on the immediate need. You know, I can't wait 5 years, 10 years for these students to be ready to help us out.
Right.
What are we doing about the hundreds of thousands of folks that have left the workforce during COVID and are watching reruns of Oprah Winfrey episodes on TV? What are we doing to engage these folks to get them back? So that's an area that I'm concentrating on, as well as, you know, bringing in students into the board. But, you know, manufacturing needs help today. Yeah,
it's a little bit of both, right? It's nice to do some R&D on the products of the future, but you got to be making products today if you're going to survive to the future. Right. It's a really good take. I mean, aside from canceling all of the reruns of Oprah Winfrey, what other options what are you doing, or what are you thinking about doing to help get those folks back re-engaged? Because I completely agree with what you're saying. Let's get them off the sidelines and into the game.
Yeah. So we tend to look, you know, let's talk about kids. If you hire a student, if you hire a good young man to work in your shop, or a good young lady, you know, human nature is the good kids tend to hang out with other good kids.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's always a sour apple in the bunch.
Yeah.
But so if we latch into somebody that we really fall in love with, you know, we have a great referral program to bring a friend in.
Yeah.
And it's worked to some degree. So I do a little bit of that. You know, a lot of fathers, you know, a lot of people our age have kids that want to bring into the industry. I'm a big fan of that because the father's invested to make sure that that child will succeed. If the father's well-liked, which in most cases it is, everybody around them supports this child or this student or this trainee, and it's usually a win-win situation for a lot of people.
Yeah, and you kind of go back to the whole thing about, you know, winners hang out with winners.
Yeah.
You know, there's the old saying, the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
So if the tree's good, it's probably producing some pretty good apples.
Yeah,
is what I would say. So Lou, you know, I want to get you going, you know, and we've got a big show here today, but just a couple quick things before I let you go. How did you get into manufacturing? What's the Lou Melluzzo story to getting into this trade? Because I could see from our conversation, both before and now, I mean, people that are just listening and can't see, he's got a glint in his eye when he talks about it. And what he told me before the show was he tried to leave the industry a little bit, had some success in the selling of a business, went out and was in flipping homes and doing all that. And while he smiled about it, he couldn't wait to get back, so he's back running manufacturing. So how'd you get into the gig?
So I have a passion for building stuff. You know, ever since I was old enough to walk, I was taking my father's lawnmower apart and putting it back together when he was at work. I have a passion for airplanes. I can't hear a noise in the sky and not look up and see what it's about. But I actually started my career in design. I was designing tooling for aircraft parts, and I said to myself, if I could design it, I can make it. And even though now, you know, I'm the CEO of a company, I really find what fuels my fire is getting out to that machine and watching the chips fly. And,
really?
You know, and you become in tune with, I can walk past a piece of CNC equipment that's working, and the noise coming off of it, I can tell you whether we're making money or not.
Come on.
Honest to God. So there's a lot in just the noise and how it's being executed that give me these pointers. And, you know, it comes with a gut feel and it comes with some experience.
How'd you get your first job in the industry? Do you remember?
I applied at Grosite Industries back in the mid-'80s, and I was fortunate enough that they took me.
They took you.
And I didn't know much about anything, and I had the opportunity to have a great boss, but more importantly, I had a guy that was ready to retire sitting next to me that had been in the industry for his entire life, and he was probably the best mentor. A couple slaps on the back of the head, but I really shaped up and, you know, and really respected what he had to say and kind of got me in the right frame of mind for this business.
Well, Lou, I'll tell you what, the thing that gives me hope is we've got a lot of people, like that guy that slapped you in the back of the head. We've got a lot of people. You're one of them. And it's just awesome to see you out here talking to these young kids and putting in the effort to get some folks to come in and be next to you so that they can learn, and that, you know, what is it? Almost 40 years from now, there'll be some other guy on this side talking to the next Lou Melluzzo about the passion and the training he learned from you.
I hope so.
Well, listen, man, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us. It was really nice talking to you.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.